Welcome back. Here is a question that stays with me. Have you ever watched someone long enough that you started to wonder whether they had been watching you back the whole time? Whether the attention was never one way to begin with? There is a particular wrongness to that realization. Not a loud kind of wrong. More like noticing, halfway through a meal, that the math on the check does not add up, and then understanding it has not added up for a long time, and you simply were not looking. Tonight we have 8 stories. They are about things that sit still, things that wait, and things that learned your name before you gave it. If this is your first time here, welcome in. Glad you made it. If you're back, good. You know what to do. Turn the lights down a little. Put in your earbuds if you have them. Let the room go quiet. Let's begin. She had not moved in 4 days. Kara was 36 years old when she spent 3 weeks house-sitting for her aunt in a quiet suburb outside Columbus, Ohio. Her aunt was flying overseas to visit family, and she needed someone to water the houseplants, collect the mail, and make sure nothing quietly went wrong in her absence. Kara had just wrapped up a contract job and had no immediate commitments. It seemed like the right kind of nothing for a few weeks. The house was a 2-story on a tree-lined street, mature oaks, minimal foot traffic, the kind of neighborhood that has a newsletter and a community Facebook group no one posts in after February. She slept in the guest room at the back, drank her coffee on the front porch each morning, and spent most of her time doing light freelance work at the kitchen table. She found the quietness genuinely restful. She had no complaints. On her second morning, while still on her first cup of coffee, she noticed the house directly across the street. It was the same architectural vintage as most houses on the block, wide front window, set slightly above the lawn on a low step. In that window, in a high-backed armchair positioned to face the street, sat an elderly woman. White hair, pulled back, a blue cardigan. From what Kara could see at that distance, the woman appeared to be resting, or reading, or simply watching the morning. Kara raised her hand in a small neighborly wave. The woman did not respond. Kara assumed she had not been seen. She finished her coffee and went inside. Attention to it. It was on the afternoon of day 4 that the feeling arrived. Not urgency, just a small snag, the way a piece of clothing catches on something invisible and stops you mid-step. More than she realized in the gaps between tasks, in the pauses in her work, and across all of those pauses, across 4 full days, the woman had not moved, not reading, not shifting position, not tilting her head to look at something off to the side, not opening the door for a delivery that had arrived that morning. Just seated, facing forward, both hands somewhere in her lap. Kara looked at the 4-day span in her memory and could not locate a single moment in it where the position had varied. She told herself, the woman was elderly. People sleep in chairs. People rest with their eyes open. She moved plenty in the hours Kara wasn't watching. When Kara was out in the back garden, or upstairs, or running errands, the woman was fine. She went back to her laptop, but she started noting the times. She wasn't tracking them consciously, not at first. She had a habit of writing the hour in the margin of her notebook when she started a new task, a trick for staying on schedule. On day 6, she looked at that margin column and saw that each entry was accompanied, in her memory, by a glance across the street, and the same result. 7:22 a.m., chair, facing forward, head slightly bowed. 10:14 a.m., chair. 12:48 p.m., chair. 3:05 p.m., chair. 5:30 p.m., chair, room behind her beginning to darken. 7:11 p.m., chair, only the floor lamp lit beside it, the rest of the room dark. The woman had not turned the lamp on. It had been on when Kara last looked at 5:30. It was always already on when she looked again. She sat with her notebook and thought about that. On day 7, she called her aunt. Her aunt was unconcerned. "That's Mrs. Heller," she said. "She's 84 and very private. She doesn't come out much. She's always in that chair, always has been." "I wouldn't worry, Kara." Kara said, "Has anyone checked on her recently?" Her aunt said she was sure Mrs. Heller was fine. Kara called the non-emergency police line the next afternoon. She apologized before she had finished explaining. She said she was house-sitting next door and was concerned about an elderly neighbor who did not appear to have moved in approximately 1 week. She described what she had observed. She said she knew it might be nothing. 2 officers came. She watched from the porch as they crossed the street and knocked. After a few minutes, 1 officer came back over to her. The woman had come to the door. She was fine, slightly irritated about the disturbance. Not. She did not look at the window across the street for the rest of that afternoon. She made a deliberate point of it, had asked for her privacy to be respected. Kara thanked the officer and felt the particular embarrassment of a person who has made something of nothing. She went inside. She thought, "You have been working alone for too long in a quiet house, and you have turned an old woman sitting in her chair into something it is not." She did not look at the window across the street for the rest of that afternoon. She made a deliberate point of it. She cooked dinner without looking, watched something on her laptop in the kitchen until 10 p.m., and went to bed. She slept well. In the morning she stood at her kitchen window while the kettle was still hissing, looking at the street the way you look at something you are not yet fully awake enough to see. The woman was in the chair. Kara stood there. The head was wrong. Not drastically, not in a way that would register in a photograph as alarming, but wrong in the way that takes a moment to locate, the way a word can look subtly misspelled before you can identify which letter is off. The neck was bowed forward at a degree that was too steep, the kind of angle a person makes when looking directly at something in their own lap, craning down, like someone who had leaned forward and then been stopped there, mid-motion, and had not corrected back. Kara told herself, she is reading. She is looking at her hands. She fell asleep at a bad angle. She made her coffee. She came back to the kitchen window 21 minutes later. The angle was identical. She called the police again. She apologized again twice, before she got to the description. She said she knew this was the second call and she was very likely wrong again, and she was sorry for the intrusion, but the position of the head was worrying her. She described it carefully. They sent 2 officers. This time they stayed longer. One went to the door. One stood on the front lawn and spoke quietly into a radio. Kara stood on her porch and waited. After about 12 minutes, one officer crossed back over. Nobody had answered. The house appeared dark inside. They would attempt to make further contact. Was she aware of any next of kin? Kara called her aunt. Her aunt was quiet for a moment after Kara described the second police visit. Then she said, "Kara, Mrs. Heller died in February, 6 months ago. The house has been empty since then. There is a dispute with the estate, some family disagreement, so it has just been sitting. I thought I mentioned it to you before you arrived. I thought I said something on the phone." Kara did not say anything. "I'm sorry," her aunt said. "I genuinely thought I had told you. The house has been empty since February." Kara said she had to go. She stood at the kitchen window and looked across the street. The window was dark now. She could make out the chair, the outline of it, but whatever had been in it was not visible in the flat afternoon light. She did not know when it had gone. She had been on the phone for 4 minutes. She stayed for 2 more days because she had promised her aunt she would, and she did not want to explain what was making her leave. She kept the front blinds down. She did not look at the window after dark. She slept poorly both nights and did not look closely at why. On the morning she left, packing her car, she scrolled back through her phone to the photos she had taken in her first day at the house. She had done what most people do when they arrive somewhere new, taken a few ambient pictures, the garden, the porch, the street, the neighborhood from the front step, documentation of a new place. She had taken them without much thought and not looked at them since. In the third photo, a wide shot of the street taken on her first morning from the front porch. Before she had noticed anything, before she had looked up from her coffee, the house across the road was visible in the background. The front window was in frame. The chair was there. Something was in it. She zoomed in. The image broke apart in pixels before she could see clearly, but the outline was there, seated, facing forward, on the morning she arrived, before she had ever noticed it, before she had ever raised her hand to wave. She was about to put the phone away, but she scrolled 1 frame further to the 4th photo, the one she had taken of the street from a slightly different angle, using the side mirror of her aunt's parked car to frame the shot. She had been pleased with the composition. The curved mirror reflected the street behind her, including the front of her aunt's house. She looked at the reflection of her aunt's front window in the car mirror. The photo was from her first morning. 9 a.m. She had been at the house for perhaps 2 hours. I am telling it with the last part. There was something at her window, from the inside, looking out. Kara has not been back to that street. She has told this story twice, both times leaving out the last part. I'm telling it with the last part. The third Canuck, I want to be clear up front that I did not believe any of it. I went to Moravia in the spring to do preliminary research for a documentary on rural depopulation. I was based in a village of about 300 people for 8 weeks. My landlord was a woman named Elena, mid-60s, practical, not unfriendly, but not particularly interested in being my cultural translator. She showed me the room, showed me the kitchen, and as I was heading out the first evening, she told me one thing: do not answer the door at night after the third knock. I asked, what, like a local superstition? She said, just do not. I thanked her and went to my desk. My setup was fine. Small room, decent Wi-Fi that dropped every time it rained, cold brew coffee I had brought from home, because I had learned over years of fieldwork not to rely on rural accommodation for caffeine. I locked the door twice every night, a habit from a decade of staying in unfamiliar places. I was comfortable. The first time I heard 3 knocks, it was my 4th night, midnight, roughly. 3 distinct knocks spaced about 2 seconds apart. I was asleep. I lay in the dark for a moment, decided that answering a door at midnight was not something I was going to do regardless of any custom, and went back to sleep. The second time was week 3. Just after 1 a.m., I was awake, working. 3 knocks, and then nothing. I sat at my desk and let them sit. I noted, quietly, that I had not answered. Not because I believed anything I told myself, but because I simply could not be bothered. The third time was week 5. I had been out with a local contact that evening and had a fair amount of wine in me. I was at my desk, not really working, and the 3 knocks came. I stood up and opened the door. Nothing. Cold air. Street empty in both directions. No sound of steps. I stood there for a moment. I felt, if I am honest, vindicated. I went to bed. I locked the door twice. I slept well. In the morning, the door was ajar, not wide. Perhaps 3 centimeters, but ajar. Both locks released. No sign of damage, no sign of force. I stood looking at it and then made my coffee and attributed it to something I had done half asleep, a mechanical act in the dark that I couldn't now account for. That afternoon I mentioned it to Elena, casually, asked if the lock sometimes stuck. She went quiet in the way people go quiet when they are not surprised. I asked about the rule again, what the origin was, whether it was a ghost story, a historical thing, what the actual logic was supposed to be. She thought for a moment. Then she said, the knocking is not trying to get you to open the door. Whatever does it already knows how doors work. The knocking is to find out if someone is home. If you answer and there is nothing there, you have confirmed that you are alone. I am home in England now, 2 years on, and I still do not know what I am locking against at this distance. But I have not answered a late knock since. I said, so what does it do with that information? She did not answer that directly. I locked the door twice that night. I have locked it twice every night since. I am home in England now, 2 years on, and I still do not know what I am locking against at this distance. But I have not answered a late knock since. Set for 2. Ji-soo had lived alone in the same apartment in Mapo district, Seoul, for 3 years when it happened. She was 29, worked a logistics coordination role that ran on 18-hour days during peak season, and traveled for work more than she had budgeted for emotionally when she took the job. Singapore, Hanoi, Guangzhou, week-long trips, sometimes back-to-back. The apartment was small, a kitchen barely wide enough to turn around in, a bedroom, a bathroom she had fitted with an extra shelf to hold the overflow of a life compressed into 60 square meters. It was hers, paid for, and the lock worked. She had changed the lock once, early on, after her landlord let himself in without notice to deal with a pipe. After that, she installed a small interior camera in the hallway outside her front door. It was low resolution, the kind bought for deterrence rather than forensics. She was not an anxious person, she just preferred to know. She came home from a week in Singapore on a Wednesday evening, 7 days out. She dropped her bags in the hallway, went to the kitchen for water. The table was set for 2 bowls, 2 sets of chopsticks, a cup on each side. Her usual place and the other side, the side that was never set because there was never anyone to set it for. She stood in the kitchen doorway for a moment, very still. She cleared it, because she needed to eat, and because she was tired, and because she was not yet ready to decide what this was. She checked the apartment, no one behind any door, the storage room locked as it always was, the windows closed and latched. The front door showed no damage, both locks intact. Back in the kitchen, she opened the overhead cabinet. She counted her mugs. 3. She always had 3. She opened the lower cabinet, the one for overflow items she rarely touched. Spare chopsticks, a set of plates from a previous apartment. She did not use it for mugs. There was a mug in it. White, with a painted rim in a style she did not recognize as anything she had bought. She took it down. Clean, dry, washed carefully, and put away with the rim facing up. On the rim, barely there, a faint mark. Lip color, a pale pink she did not own. Ji-soo set the mug on the counter, looked at it for a while, then put it back in the lower cabinet. She ate standing over the sink. She did not know why, exactly. It just did not seem right to sit at the table. In the morning, she called the building management office. They pulled the entrance camera log for the 7 days she was away. No unauthorized swipes on her floor, no record of entry to her unit from any registered access point. They sent maintenance to check the physical locks. No damage, no sign of tampering. That evening, she pulled the footage from her own hallway camera on her phone. She had set it to continuous record. She fast-forwarded through 6 days of an empty corridor. On the third night of her trip, at 1:40 a.m., her front door opened. The footage was poor and low light, as it always was in the hallway's dim motion sensor lighting. The figure that entered was average height, unremarkable, moving without urgency. The door closed. The corridor sat empty for 4 minutes and 23 seconds. Then the door opened from the inside. The figure stepped into the hallway to leave. In the last few seconds of the clip, before the figure moved out of frame, it looked up directly at the camera. Held the look for 2-3 seconds, unhurried. Ji-soo paused the clip on that frame. The image quality was low. The resolution was poor. The face was caught in the corridor's flat overhead light at an upward angle, and the camera, in its blurred and approximate way, had resolved that face into something that matched the proportions of Ji-soo's own features, her own jaw, her own brow line, the particular angle at which she held her chin when she was looking at something directly. She could not say with certainty that the face was hers. She could not say with certainty that it was not. She moved out 3 weeks later. She did not take the mug. She left it in the lower cabinet where she had found it, and she did not go back to look at it. She counted the mugs in the new apartment before she unpacked anything else. The register, I know how this sounds. I have told it to 2 people, and both of them asked if I had misread the dates or misread my own name, and I told them both the same thing. I will tell you, I have the photo. I took it on my phone at the time. The image is not ambiguous. I was 22, just finished 2nd year at university. I had been planning a solo trail in northern British Columbia for 2 summers, and I finally went that August. 4 days one way through a technical but well-marked route, my first solo trip. I filed a float plan with my parents and my cousin before I left the trailhead at 7 a.m. on August 13th. I was careful about that. I wanted people to know where I was. Day 2, around noon, I reached a trail junction. There was a register box on a wooden post, standard for that country. A log for hikers to sign in, name, date, party size, direction, any conditions worth noting. I opened it and signed in. My name, August 14th, solo, northbound. I always flip back through trail registers. It is a habit I picked up from hiking with my dad. I like to know who else is out there. The 3 entries above mine were dated August 16th, August 17th, and August 18th. I was standing there on August 14th. I was certain of the date. It was on my phone, on my watch, in the float plan I had filed 2 days before. But the 3 entries directly above mine in the register were from 2 days in the future, 3 days in the future, and 4 days in the future. 3 different names, 3 different handwriting styles. Each described the trail that day, the weather, the pace, whether they had seen wildlife. Each entry ended on a version of the same line. August 16th, beautiful up here. Did not see another hiker. August 17th, clear day, not a soul the whole stretch. August 18th, perfect silence out here. Felt like no one had been this way in years. At the bottom of the August 18th entry, in a 4th hand, different from the entry text, added separately, in pen, was my first name. Not my full name, just my first name. In handwriting I did not recognize. I stood there for a while. Then I took a photo with my phone. Then I kept walking. I came out on August 17th and reported it to the ranger at the trailhead. He went back to the junction with me to check. My August 14th entry was there. Below mine, 3 clean entries from August 15th, 16, and 17. hikers who had passed through after me, correct dates, normal observations. The 3 future dated entries were gone. There was no August 18 entry. There was nothing with my name at the bottom. Photo more times than I can count. I have not done a solo backcountry trip since. My parents think it is because the solo aspect got to me, and I have let them think that. I have stared at that photo more times than I can count. I have not done a solo backcountry trip since. My parents think it is because the solo aspect got to me, and I have let them think that. The man at the corner table, a man named Lucas, told me this story about 18 months ago. He asked me not to use his surname. We had met through a mutual friend, and he had mentioned the restaurant, and then something about how he had left it, and then the whole thing came out in a way that seemed to surprise even him, the kind of account that has been sitting too long in one place and moves when it finally finds a listener. I am passing it on the same way he gave it to me, incomplete, and with the one detail at the end that he said he could not stop thinking about. Lucas managed a small restaurant in Vila Madalena in Sao Paulo for 9 years. He described it as a neighborhood place rather than a destination, the kind of room where people came back for decades rather than discovered for the first time. 18 tables, a short menu that changed slowly, a wine list shaped over years by quiet consensus between staff and regulars. He was good at his job. He knew his clientele the way, furniture in a dark room, without looking directly, by feel and position. There was a man who came every Thursday at 7 p.m. He always sat at the same table, far left corner, back to the wall. Lucas had decided years ago that this was a habit from someone who had once needed to watch their back, and never unlearned it. The man ordered black coffee and nothing else, stayed 2 hours, tipped 30% on a single coffee every week without fail. Spoke only to order and to say thank you when he left. He had been coming for as long as Lucas had worked there, which meant at minimum 9 years, and in 9 years the man had not visibly aged. Lucas had decided a long time ago not to think about that. The man died on a Thursday afternoon in March. A delivery motorcycle struck him at a crossing 2 streets from the restaurant at 4:30 p.m. Lucas learned this from 2 police officers who came in on the following Tuesday and asked about the man's weekly routine. That Thursday evening, the Thursday after the Thursday he died, Lucas worked the regular shift. He was aware of the corner table being empty. He found himself not looking at it directly, the way you find yourself not looking at a particular chair at a table set for the wrong number of people. At 7:22 p.m., a server touched Lucas on the arm and said, without elaborating, the corner table. Lucas looked. A man was sitting there. Same build, same coat, back to the wall facing the room. Lucas stood at the bar and did not move for what he estimated was 30 seconds. He was aware of a specific feeling, not quite fear, more like the feeling of arithmetic failing, of running the calculation again and arriving at the same impossible result. He picked up his notepad and walked over. He told himself, very deliberately, as he crossed the room, "It is a different man in a similar coat." The table was available. He sat down at it. "There is nothing else to know." He said, "Good evening. What can I get you?" The man said, "Black coffee, nothing else." Lucas wrote it down. He went back to the bar and asked his barista to take the order. He went into the kitchen and stood at the prep counter for 4 minutes, holding the edge of it with both hands. Then he went back out, because it was Thursday evening, and the restaurant was full and he was the manager, and there was no version of this in which he stayed in the kitchen. He went to the corner table. The man looked up. Lucas said, "Excuse me, sir, have we met before?" The man said, "Lucas," not as a greeting, not as a question. "The way you say a name you have been keeping in your mouth." Lucas had worked the restaurant for 9 years. He did not wear a name tag. The culture of the place was informal first names, but introduced, never assumed. He had not introduced himself. He untied his apron. He walked to the back door. He left. He has a different job now. He works mornings. He does not describe what he does if he can avoid it. What he told me, at the end of our conversation, was this. The thing he thought about most was not the face, not the voice, not even the name. It was this. When he stood at the corner table and could not find a word, and the silence stretched out between them, the man looked down at his watch. At exactly the moment the pause had gone on long enough. Not in the way of someone impatient, in the way of someone who already knew how long the pause would be, who had already been there before, and had timed it, and was simply confirming the count. Lucas said. It was like he had practiced it, like he had run the scene already, and knew exactly when to look. He did not finish his coffee after telling me that. We sat there for a while without talking. I still think about the pause. The film. This was told to me by a colleague named Koji who works as an archivist at a small documentary museum in Osaka. He described himself as a person with poor judgment at flea markets, which he offered by way of explanation for why he bought a used 35mm compact camera he did not need from a vendor in Nakanoshima one November Saturday. The vendor mentioned, as an afterthought, that the camera still had a roll in it. Partially shot, he thought. Koji, out of professional habit, took the roll to a lab that week. He got 24 prints back. Domestic interior photos. Someone's apartment, kitchen, living area, hallway, the bedroom doorway, the bathroom. The kind of accidental archive that suggests a family testing new film on a weekend. Nothing unusual in the first 10 prints. Photo 11 was a hallway shot, taken from inside a bedroom, looking out through the open door into the corridor beyond. In the hallway, their back to the camera, was a figure. Average height. Standing with a particular stillness, the kind that reads as listening rather than waiting. Koji said he recognized the posture before he understood why. The specific way a person carries their weight on one hip when tired. The set of the shoulders. He knew it before he could place it. Then he looked at the shirt. White, with a dark stripe at the shoulder. He had bought it at a second-hand market 3 weeks before. It had been listed as new old stock. He was wearing it the day he sat down to go through the prints. He kept going. Near the back of the roll, a balcony shot. The view from the apartment, the street below, the neighborhood rooflines, the skyline. Koji recognized the crosswalk below. The neighborhood rooflines, the skyline. Koji recognized the crosswalk below. He recognized the convenience store on the corner. The school roof visible further on. The photos were taken from his building. But the skyline was wrong. A large commercial tower that now dominates that view, completed in 2014, visible from his balcony every day, was not in it. The photos showed a skyline from before 2014. Koji moved in 2018. He had the film roll dated at the lab. The stock was consistent with manufacture from the early 1990s, properly aged. He had the shirt verified, purchased 3 weeks ago, not a vintage piece. He is an archivist. He understands photographic chemistry. He has no framework that accommodates a figure wearing a recently purchased shirt appearing on film stock made 30 years ago. He showed me photo 11. I'm not going to describe what I felt, because I'm still trying to find the right word. What I can tell you is this: in the background of the hallway shot, past the figure, through the open bedroom doorway, there is something written on the bedroom wall. Too small to read at the photo's resolution. Koji has been trying to enlarge it for several months. He told me he is afraid of what it says. He has not looked yet. The volunteer. I volunteered at the hospice for 11 years. I want to say that first, because I think it matters. I had been a district nurse for 27 years before I retired, and I continued with the hospice work because I found I did not want to stop entirely. I was not, by that point in my life, easily unsettled. I had sat with many people at the end of things. I had held many hands at the last moment. I had a steady and practical relationship with what most people are not prepared to witness. I say this so you understand I am not a person given to dramatizing events I cannot explain. The hospice was a small facility in a converted Victorian house on the outskirts of a market town in Somerset. I knew the staff, the layout, and the rhythms of each shift. The Tuesday night in question I was on from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., a shift I had worked dozens of times over the years. Around 11:30, I became aware of a woman I did not recognize moving through the corridor on the residential floor. She wore the correct volunteer lanyard and the kind of neutral, practical clothing that hospice volunteers tend to settle into after their first few weeks. She was young, mid-20s, I estimated. She moved with the particular economy of motion I recognized from experienced palliative care workers. No unnecessary gestures, no hesitation at doorways, no looking around for direction. She went to the rooms that needed attending without being told. I assumed she was a new placement from the agency. I assumed the communication to inform me had not been passed through correctly. This was not unusual, and I was a volunteer myself, not staff, so information sometimes arrived by a different route. I observed her for approximately an hour. She was competent and quiet, and clearly knew what she was doing. I found her presence reassuring. The ward was calmer for it. At about 3 a.m., during the hour when the night settles into its most still configuration, I went to find her to introduce myself and ask which agency she had come from. She was not in the corridor, not in any of the patient rooms, not in the small staff kitchen or the rest area. I checked each space methodically. She was simply not there. I asked the senior nurse on the night shift, Maria, who had worked the hospice for 12 years and knew every face on the volunteer roster. I asked if she knew where the new volunteer had gone. Maria looked at me in a particular way. Careful. She had not seen any volunteer that night except me. I described the young woman. Maria did not know her. She checked the agency rota on her screen. One volunteer scheduled for the shift. My name. Before I could consider that fully, Maria said, "Go and check on Mr. Haworth in room 6. He has been restless." Mr. Haworth had been unresponsive for 4 days. His prognosis had moved faster than anyone had predicted. He was in the last stage. I went to room 6. He was awake. Not confused, not distressed, awake in the specific, clear way that sometimes happens near the very end, when a person comes briefly back to themselves before the last departure. We spoke for a little while. He was coherent and calm. He held my hand. He died at 3:40 a.m., peacefully, without resistance, in the way I have only seen in people who were genuinely ready. When I came out of room 6, I found his family in the corridor. His daughter, his son, and a younger grandchild. They had arrived in time. His daughter thanked me and said, "We got the call just as we were going to bed." She said she thought he would want someone with him when we arrived. I asked who had called them. She said, "A woman volunteer." She had phoned from an internal hospice number. She had not given her name, but she had said she was a volunteer, and that Mr. Haworth was asking for his family. I found Maria. The call was in the system log. The internal line it was placed from was the phone in room 14. Room 14 had been sealed for refurbishment since September. The door was padlocked. The log showed the call was placed at 3:14 a.m. When maintenance checked the padlock on room 14 the next morning, it had not been opened. Mr. Haworth's family was there when he needed them. The help was real, and it came from somewhere. I have thought about this for 3 years. I have no framework that resolves it. I am a practical person, and I believe in what can be demonstrated, and what I can demonstrate is only this. Something moved through my ward that night with knowledge and purpose, and left no record except a logged call from a sealed room and a family that arrived in time. I still volunteer every Tuesday. I have not seen her again. I do not know if that is a relief or something else. The passenger. I will keep this short because I still do not like thinking about it, and I am only telling it because someone asked me directly, and I have never been good at lying when asked directly. I am an accountant. I am a practical person. I take the overnight express from Lagos to Ibadan every few months to see my mother. I have made that journey perhaps 30 times. I know the bus. I know the route. I know how to sleep on it. On this trip I was in my usual seat, toward the back on the left side, aisle seat. The bus was about 2/3 full. We left the terminal at 9 p.m. About 40 minutes out, I noticed the man across the aisle. He was looking at me, directly, without adjustment. Not the glance you give someone when you're settling in or looking past them at something outside the window. A direct, unblinking look. I noticed it and looked away. I looked back a few minutes later. He was still looking. Same angle, same expression, which was to say no expression in particular. Just looking. I told myself, some people are odd on buses. I read my phone for the next hour. I looked up. He was still looking. He had not moved, not his head, not his hands, not once. His water bottle was on the tray in front of him, and he had not touched it. At the rest stop, I got off to use the facilities and to get some air. When I came back, his seat was empty. I assumed he had gotten off. I settled back in. 30 minutes went by. Something made me look behind me. The rows behind me had been mostly empty when we left Lagos. 3 rows back, in a seat that had been empty earlier, the man was sitting. He had not gotten off the bus. He had moved back, 3 rows closer from where he had started, and he was still looking. I did not look back again. I did not move. I sat with my bag on my lap, and I watched the road, and I did not turn around until we arrived in Ibadan. I told my mother when I got in. I described him. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Next time you see that, do not let him know you noticed. Do not turn around. Do not react." I asked her how she knew what I was describing. She said she had seen him before, on that same route. Years ago. I asked when. She said, "Before you were born. I have not taken a night bus since. I tell people it is because I prefer to drive now. That is not the reason." Eight stories tonight. I do not know which one found the crack, but one of them did. You probably already know which. Maybe it was the chair, maybe it was the table set for two, maybe it was your name at the bottom of a register that had not been signed yet. That is the thing about this kind of wrong, it does not arrive. It was already there, already sitting, already waiting for someone to look at the right moment, and now that thought is somewhere in the back of your mind, and that is exactly where it wanted to be. Take care of yourself out there. I will see you next time.